Happy to have such a elite panel here uh, on this discussion for such an important topic of drug supplies. We did talk about, as you said yesterday, a lot about these things because this is something of a very important aspect. And as we know that India is the largest supplier of pharmaceutical products for the world. And as I say, that one out of every third pill is manufactured in India, and we have the largest number of facilities outside USA which are inspected by US FDA, and we carry that kind of a responsibility, and the stakes are very high. And fortunate to have these panel members, Dr. Ranjana, Pradeep from Quality, Gaurav from Supply Chain, and Emily from USFDA. I'm not sure, I can't see her, but I'm sure that she'll be joining soon. Basically, we want to discuss about this topic, and I would go around the table. Of course, the table it's a virtual table to ask each one of you. I mean, we are almost aware of these drug shortage issues, and given the current situation, given your individual areas of responsibility within your organization, the question that comes up, and I can ask you to give a short summary of what are the areas that you think are important, and maybe we can dwell upon them in detail as we move around the panel discussion. So for the generic medicines of the world, what are the key areas the pharma companies should keep in mind to ensure uninterrupted drug supplies commitment? So that's basically what we're trying to look at. So I'll ask Dr. Ranjana to start and maybe move around with the other panel members. Dr. Ranjana?
Sure. So first of all, thank you. And the topic is very appropriate. As we know, 62% of the drug shortage is as a result of quality or manufacturing issues. So the right people here, and hopefully we can add to the discussion that has already been happening. So I'm a practical person, and with that comes, how do we prevent drug shortage? What are the important factors that we in industry have to remember? I'd like to start with dispense to dispatch and everything in between, the entire value chain. So now when we say dispense, what comes in here is all our vendors, procurement, raw material, excipients. It seems mundane, but if I don't have an alternate vendor and I'm making a drug which is very unique, and that a vendor goes out of business or cannot supply, there goes my product. I cannot supply that anymore. So I think each aspect that goes into making the product is critical, is important, and it's up to us to ensure that each of those aspects are taken care of. So that's the beginning part, the dispensing part, the equipment qualification. Do I have good preventive maintenance? Do I have good qualification programs? Is my equipment going to run, or is it going to break down? And this is in production. This is also in the laboratory. These are our main two pillars. Then the middle part is all of that manufacturing and testing. Do I have a product that perhaps is not at peak performance? Is it central? Is the manufacturability at the center? Do I have a nice curve, a bell-shaped curve, or is it on the left? Is it on the right? Am I going to be able to continue to make this product without it failing, or I'm just not able to make the product? So I think it's our responsibility, pharma's responsibility, to ensure that each and every product that the patient is counting on is central. And we get this through our process validation. We continue to look at our annual product review. So the health of each product has to be paid attention to. While I talk about individual product, it's also important to remember the 6 systems. And while we are all familiar, how much importance are we giving it each day? And I say each day because any one day something can go off. Your facility, the materials as we talked about, lab controls. While they're just two words, there's a lot that goes in, and not knowing who the audience is, I can't, Rajiv, you will have to direct us as to how deep, because this topic we can discuss it for days. So lab controls, the production controls, packaging and labeling, and quality is a whole world in itself. Am I where I should be? Then the last but not the least is, once it's distributed, the product, what kind of complaints am I getting? And that's a very important indicator to prevent drug shortage. Because if I'm getting complaints where the patient, or adverse events, where the patient is trying to tell us something, and if I'm not able to correct it, then either I can't produce it anymore, or I'm told to take it off the market. So I think there are many, many factors that play a very vital role in ensuring that we can prevent drug shortage. And to be honest with you, I look at it as our own health. When we have a cough or a cold, you don't take care of it. Mostly patients don't reach ICU right away. So there are little signs that the body is giving us. Body is giving us little signals. But if we ignore those signals, God forbid, we land in the ICU. And for us, in this parlance, drug shortage is like ICU. So I think it's up to us to pay attention to every one of those details to ensure that we prevent drug shortage, because the patients are counting on us, our employees are counting on us, we are counting on ourselves to ensure that the company runs and runs well. So Rajiv, I can talk more, but I'd let other panelists also add their.
So thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Ranjana. I think you did mention about the entire value chain of the operations and the quality, and most critical is the patient, which is the important piece of critical aspect in the whole process, which needs to be looked at. So moving on to Pradeep. Pradeep, your thoughts on what exactly should the companies do to ensure? Of course, we'll have some more questions, but just as a general aspects, what comes to your mind, and what are the things that keep you busy on these aspects?
Thanks, Dr. Rajiv. I think Dr. Ranjana has covered most of it. So a little different take, I would say, on that. For me, the plants has to run. The plants has to be compliant all the time. And that aspect is ensure that would ensure other aspects, as Ranjana has said, that from dispensing to dispatch. If we see a last, let's say 5, 10 or 15 years, few of the things are coming time and again to stop the plants not approved, or plants getting into warning letters, OIs, import alerts. So I would like to take 5 or 6 pointers, I would say, from my point of view, from my vantage point of view. The first one is data integrity. That has remained a constant force all these years and will remain for going forward. One thing is the digitalization coming in so much in all aspects of our work. I think that should improve the integrity aspects of it. The second thing is cleaning, not having cross-contamination, facility upkeep. These are, again, 3 aspects related to one another. That's another thing that keeps coming. The third one, of course, is investigations in terms of root cause identification based on sound science, err on the side of caution, ensure robust CAPA such that these incidents are not repeated. The other thing I would say is the industry and each company has to be proactive and quick to adapt to the changing expectations, the new guidances that are coming, spelling out those expectations. Wherever needed, seek help of experts as necessary. The next point I would like to talk about is that people are the key. So ensure robust training programs, not only to train on the work they have to carry out, but also ensure that the science behind the work they are doing. Ensure that the training program is not only training them, there is a refresher training to brush their understanding and knowledge, upskilling of the people on a continuous basis, so that they commit less mistakes and they don't repeat the mistakes. Last but not the least, the culture is the key and everything is driven on by the culture. In my view, walk the talk is important, specifically from senior leadership. Appreciate, reward, and promote right behaviors, and zero tolerance for unacceptable behaviors. These are, Dr. Rajiv, some of my thought process on this.
Absolutely, Pradeep. You touched upon some of the very important topics on investigation, cross contamination. I think the showstoppers are a large number, and investigations not done on the right time and not completed. I think we're just holding on to the batches which could otherwise be dispatched with a proper reason for the investigation, the CAPA. People training, yes, we talked about a lot. We talked about a lot yesterday also about the culture, about the people, and how we can ensure that it's taken care of. And yesterday, Amit, talked a lot about the Gemba walks and the connection of the seniors with the people at the shop floor, which makes a lot of difference in terms of ensuring that the failures are minimized, and that's what we can ensure. So coming back to Gaurav, you are into supply chain and demand and supply. I know that it's a very taxing job. We know that everybody is after you to get the right metal at the right time. Of course, for you, the biggest challenge is on the pricing. But what are the things that come to your mind when you talk about uninterrupted supply commitments for any organization? Yours is quite a large organization. I know that the commitments are very large.
So you are right, Dr. Rajiv. When it comes to the last leg, which is the supply chain, that's where all the pressure gets at the end of the tunnel. And yeah, thank you, Dr. Ranjana and Mr. Chakravarti, for summarizing and covering the entire aspects of what goes into what are the risks and what are the measures that one needs to make sure that we are able to ensure the uninterrupted flow of supplies. I would just want to add a flavor of supply chain within whatever has been covered for the. I'll not be repeating the aspects which are already covered by the panelists. I would want to extend it from, calling it from dispensing to dispatch. I would say it starts with sourcing to dispatch. So for us at supply chain, it is very, very important with the kind of vendors that we are working with, what is the quality track record that they have. We want to make sure that the backend is able to support. They have quality track record. They've got multiple sites qualified to supply. Also making sure that while we are selecting those vendors, they are not geographically consolidated. We are able to diverse that aspect of it with the recent learnings that we have had. So for us, actually, it starts with sourcing. And then obviously, if I talk about from a supply chain point of view, when we are designing on the capacities, we want to work on something and invest in capacities and process which are scalable, because we've seen a certain event trigger wherein the demand has gone up to the level beyond the normal expectation. So working with manufacturing, making sure that we are validating products in multiple areas across multiple sites in case there is issue on compliance coming within the manufacturing network. So we are able to mitigate those kind of risks. Obviously, run a risk assessment program with our vendors, including transporters. So we even work with them while we are securing approval to make sure that they are able to get the supplies of the input material. And I would say while we work with them, there's one more aspect which is very, very important in tackling this, which is having an open and transparent communication across the entire value chain, right through your vendors, suppliers, as well as right up to your customers. And I'm sure if there's a transparent flow of communication on time, it certainly helps in minimizing the impact of disruption that one may have. I mean, we have seen a good traction from the US FDA in particular, wherein shortages are handled in a typical way. We find the cell reaching out to us, which gives us good time to respond to those calls. So these are some of the aspects that I wanted to highlight from a supply chain point of view.
I think that's a good point, Gaurav. You mentioned about the communication, where if there are some disruptions, you can always inform well in advance, and everybody in the entire value chain can take necessary actions. But I can imagine the kind of pressure that you go through, because right from your procurement till the supply, I think your responsibility continues to be there throughout the entire process. And of course, here we didn't talk about the pricing part, which is another area that you have to handle it on a year-on-year basis to ensure that you get the best material, the same consistent material at the good price, and ensure the prices are not escalated like what we saw in the current recent pandemic times, where there was such an escalation and there was so much of disruption in the supplies of material to the manufacturing sites. So thank you so much. I don't see Emmy joining here. The backend team, do we have Emily joining here? I can't see her, or neither her video is on, but we can move on. There are some couple of questions pointedly to our panelist. And let me move on to the next question to Dr. Ranjana. Of course, as a head of quality, the biggest challenge that we normally face is the regulatory inspections. So the question is, successful regulatory inspections is an important aspect for the sites to continue supplying medicines. How are the outcomes of the inspections linked to seamless supply of drug products?
So excellent question. So I will build upon everything that Pradeep has said and what we've just heard from our supply chain guru and what I said earlier, because I think everything is so integrated. And while our core competency, our core job is to manufacture, test, distribute, we don't worry about so many things that we say, okay, someone else is worrying, someone else is worrying. But in order to ensure that my inspections, and I'm inspection ready every single day. In my opinion, if your door is open for business, it is open for an audit. And that's how it is in the US. Now, what I think is of utmost importance is the self-inspection, the internal audit program, and then of course the regulatory. So while on the left side for a second, just if you could separate our activities into two. Left side, we're manufacturing 3 shifts. People are working non-stop and we're doing all of that stuff. We're testing, we're doing investigations, we're doing cleaning validation, possible. All that is happening. But is there a check? Is there an independent check? And that's where the self-inspection comes in. Is my self-inspection rugged? Is it going to give me early warning signs? And each one of us can ask ourselves, hand on heart. Second is my internal audit program. That's an extremely good program if done well, done courageous. Honestly, of course, courageously, transparently. If my internal audit program is solid, then I am going to know everything that I need to know. I'm going to know about all those opportunities in my factory, in my lab, in my warehouse, in my wherever, sourcing, anywhere. So I think that is extremely, extremely important. I'm not trying to be prescriptive. I'm saying simply things that really work, tried and tested. Then the third is the regulatory inspection. Now, if I haven't done a good job in my self-inspection or my internal audit, I didn't pay attention. And that auditing is only just a little slice of time. There's so much in each one of our organizations. There's just so much. You can't cover everything. So, of course, we have to do thematic audits to ensure what are the themes coming out and address it as it occurs. Don't waste time in writing reports and discussing and arguing and all of that. Fix it. Find it, fix it. Find it, fix it. And if we do all of that, the inspection is going to yield positive results. Of course, there may be some issues. And you know what? We're doing our job. The regulator is also doing their job, because their job is to make sure that, am I doing it exactly what the regulation expects me to do? Sometimes what happens is that the inspector will see something and say, well, you didn't do such and such. And then we go and correct it. They say, well, if I wasn't here, you would continue to do it in the manner that you did it until I came and I showed it to you. And that becomes a 483 observation. So, Dr. Rajiv, then the site, instead of manufacturing and testing, the entire focus goes on responding to the 483 or responding to whatever citations. It's just so much extra work, time, energy, resource, takes away from our core job. And our core job is to make product for the patient and not create this drug shortage. So I really urge all our listeners and ourselves, and this is an everyday thing, is have these programs rock solid. And I am sure it's going to yield in good inspections. If inspections are good, I am going to spend more time manufacturing and testing and supplying and distributing rather than responding, because it's really hard work. It's really hard to be on that side of the equation. Another thing that I didn't mention in the first question, if I may, and it also is pertinent to this inspection, is, and I think Pradeep mentioned it, he couched it under culture, is my management involved in it? Am I making science-based decisions? Am I acting promptly? Am I identifying the issues? Once I identify, am I investigating on time? And am I doing what I should be doing to prevent future problems? I think the involvement, and Q10 is there, quality maturity model. Many of you know that's the big new thing that's coming out. Is my top management involved? Do they have the ear on the ground? Are the things being fixed? Because if your internal audit is bubbling up and showing something is happening, am I responding to it in a timely manner? Otherwise, there is a disconnect. And that I think we really need to pay very, very close attention to. So thank you for listening. And again, I can keep talking, but the timekeeper is going to say, all right, your time is up. Let others give their information. So thank you, Dr. Rajiv.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Anjana. Welcome, Dr. Emily. I can see you here. So thanks for joining. To start with, we started this discussion with one question, and the discussion is about, you come from the regulatory agency, and for us, it's important that here we have on the panel members from the pharmaceutical industry, from quality and supply chain. From a regulatory perspective, what are the things that you feel the pharma companies should keep in mind to ensure uninterrupted drug supplies? So I thought that we could set in the context over here and then go into some more details about your perspective and about the expectation from the regulatory agencies for the pharma industry, so that we ensure that there's no disruption in the supplies of medicine. So your thoughts, please.
Of course, and I'm very sorry for joining so late, but thank you for having us here. I think the largest thing for us is, for the FDA in particular, and products that we need for the US population, is knowing ahead of time of any issues that any companies are undergoing. So maybe you are not expecting an interruption in supply, maybe you're not expecting a disruption in supply, but sometimes things happen. So us knowing ahead of time of any issues that may occur, any notification that we have in advance is what we need in order to assist you in whatever you might need to get through that problem. And maybe it's not something we can assist your particular company with, but then at least we can look and see if there are alternate companies that might be able to assist in that time frame. We're not going to, just because someone provides us a notification, doesn't mean that we're going to jump on it and go post something that is in shortage. We know that we have to wait and see what your investigation uncovers, or whatever you're able to remedy on your own. We prefer if you're able to remedy on your own, of course. So, but us knowing that there is a possibility that there could be a disruption gives us a little bit of time to think of next steps that might help keep product available for patients. And for sure, I'm sure you've all heard this said multiple times, especially from the agency, to not stop manufacturing before you come to us with a potential issue. Let us work with you to see if there is something that we can work on together to keep product available for patients.
I think that's a very good thought and a very good decision that the FDA takes. And we should be open, that's for sure. And I think the FDA will come out with good solutions for the industry. And if there are any kind of disruptions, we'll be able to mitigate them. So thanks for that. We move on to some more questions around the issues of drug shortages And one of the recent issue, which has been quite a bothering concern for us, is about nitrosamines. So, okay, so I would ask Pradeep over here that how have the companies taken the issue of nitrosamine as one of the current concerns for delays and shortage in the drug supplies? The last 4 years, we started with valsartan as one of the issue, and then it snowballed into so many products, so many issues, and that has been one of the reasons for drug shortages around the world. And some of the products are right now out of usage, and they are banned from being prescribed. So, Pradeep, what do you think are the concerns, and how are we going to take this the mitigation plan?
Thanks, Dr. Rajiv. I think it's been quite a journey for the industry, right, on nitrosamines so far. When the first revision was released, I think way back in February 2021, the guidance mentioned only 6 to 7 general nitrosamines and some product-specific nitrosamines. Most of the industry, I believe, at that point of time, took it for testing the final product, API or drug product. Most part ignored the starting materials in process, possible generation of these impurities. Solvents, record solvents, were not thoroughly investigated. Of course, later came an NDSRAs, which again expanded the scope of assessment for the products manufactured by various companies, for those companies. The good part, I think, most of it is, for most of the companies, I would say, is the nitrosamine issue is slowly getting behind them, I would say. Then came the FDA guidance in August this year, which has given a clear-cut acceptance and guidance values for several NDSRAs. And also, most importantly, they have laid out a clear methodology to follow the assessment and deriving the limits for nitrosamines and NDSRAs, the methodology and the path that has to be followed, which is a very welcome thing in industry. Industry, for I would say, till that point of time, mostly struggling with finding out the limits, what limits should be there. Most of the companies are following the ICH limit of 80 nanogram per day when there is no specific literature or guidance is available. Some companies followed the temporary acceptable intake of 178 nanogram per day based on EMEA guidance. And they started developing the methods and then the testing of the both APIs and drug products where that's such a possibility of formation of nitrosamines is there. Overall, I think last few years, last couple of years, I would say specific, this has resulted in several recalls of the affected products. Of course, resulted in 483s, warning letters, and in some cases, import alerts. Of course, this all, in some products, I would say, in some cases, led to drug shortage. One thing I must say is DSS division of FDA is very, very proactive. They are very approachable, and they have acted in sense of urgency where necessary, where certain products are required for the population there. To ensure that the necessary discussions are worked out in coordination or in discussion with the company. And those discussions have been granted, I would say, in some of the cases. This is, I would say, really helpful. And this also ensured that some of those key drugs remain commercially available on the market. That's a very, I would say, proactive and very good measures taken by FDA, especially the DSS division.
Yeah.
Overall, the last point I would like to go overall for this process, assessing nitrosamines, companies, I would say, in general, started slow off the blocks. And today, I would say most of the companies have a full-fledged division for our dedicated personnel for assessing the nitrosamines, the developing method, testing, and making a strategy and the final conclusion based on those testing. So I think for most part, I think industry is slowly coming out of it, and they have now robust systems or processes in place. And I think the deadline is also extended by a couple of years by FDA for the final assessment. So that should also help to alleviate the shortages. Thank you, Dr. Raju.
Thank you. Thanks, Pradeep. I think you covered everything that was there. And the positive part is that we are trying to come on track. But just to add to this particular concern, I would like to ask Emily about, do you think that the industry is doing almost what is required? How are we faring? And is there something that the FDA or the regulatory agencies would like to support more beyond what has been done? Because I know after the issue was identified, there's a lot of unnecessary, surprise and suspense about what should be done. The company stopped making products. They went back to the R&D. They started working them, started buying lots of high-end instruments and trying to look at the products. And as Pradeep said, recalls was a very common thing. But now things are under control. There's a lot of support given. But is there something that you would like to add? Like what would we expect from FDA? Because this NDSRI is something that came up a couple of months and a year back. And now once we started looking at the secondary amine as a source of impurity, the NDSRIs are now taking over. But that also only a couple of products are under a scanner. But just to understand your thoughts about what would FDA be supporting us in the next couple of months and years?
No, it's a very big issue that the agency is taking very seriously, and we still have a large number of subject matter experts within the agency that get together and continue to evaluate the various impurity issues from the various nitrosamines in products that we keep continuing to discover new nitrosamines, new products that contain these. As we have better detection, it's going to continue. So there's definitely ongoing working groups within the agency trying to understand best paths forward for these products. So we are not in any way slowing down now that the guidance has been put out. I think that was our first larger step to aid in continuation of product accessibility, was getting the guidance out there with recommended acceptable intake limits. So as was already discussed, so that's a big piece of it. But as new products come up, as new things are found, we will continue to work with the companies when possible to allow, sometimes to provide additional discretion, limited discretion to keep, some of these medically necessary products available until some of the other impurity levels can be decreased. Because, when they're first found, we can't just automatically leave vulnerable patients without product at all. So there will be, we will continue to work with companies on the particular products that we need to keep available while we work on figuring out what the best limits are. So there's not much more other than what we've been doing, but we'll continue to do that and try and be as interactive with everyone. So bring us what you found. We'll work with you and try and keep product out there in the interim.
Dr. Desai, you are muted.
Yeah, I think you mentioned very correctly that the guidance has really helped us, and this is taking us in the right direction. So thanks for the support that the FDA is giving us. One question to Gaurav. Gaurav, the concern about supply chain of supply of the raw materials, availability of uninterrupted raw material supplies at reasonable pricing is something a big challenge for you. And what do you think the industry is taking steps to ensure that we don't see any surprises in this area?
Yeah, interesting one, Dr. Rajiv. So supply continuity, business continuity, cost competitiveness, risk management were already in focus much earlier. COVID-19 event that we had and the recent geopolitical situation that we had brought forward some of the other aspects that one needs to take care while doing the entire risk management within the value chain. Now, if I have to respond to this question, I would put it in two parts. One are the measures which most of the companies are taking, which are pertaining to taking actions on the information which is available. And I would start with usage of the early warning system as far as what is going on in the market. So currently we have access to the database wherein an information communication protocol established with supplier customers, wherein we get early warning signals in terms of any disruptions that we are seeing for a particular molecule. And that's where the action actually starts, by picking up those signals, working proactively, preempting what is going to come, taking some actions in advance. So that is one aspect of working with the information that we have. Second is we started getting closer to the customer. I mean, we are able to have an open discussion with them. The frequency and the exchange of information with the customer has gone up significantly over a period of time, wherein we have clear visibility on what is it that they have in stock, what is it that they are selling, again helping us in planning it better, seeing forward in terms of what is coming. So that helps in sort of reacting to the disruptions that we may have in demand. That is another aspect. Obviously safety stock and inventory is another aspect, which again going beyond the sigma difference that we have of demand forecasting error versus a supply error, building something beyond on it, depending on the probability of the risk that it has on a particular molecule. So all these are getting factored when most of the companies are working to make sure that the supplies are interrupted. Now, these are one set of measures. The other set of measures are something which are managed project-wise, which, again, I would want to say that it starts with the selection of the suppliers. Whenever you are making a choice of sourcing with the supplier, you want to be sure that they have a good track record of compliance and supplies on quality aspect. You are also able to mitigate the risk of having concentration of them supplying from a single site versus the product coming up from multiple sites, having suppliers across different geographies, long-term contracts with suppliers. Now, this is something which has started happening that brings in a point of stability in terms of supplies as well as some price commitment, which helps in sort of managing the cost aspect, which is very, very important. And obviously supplier audit and qualification on time. So you may want to be able to proactively identify if you are seeing any risk coming, and which would actually get reflected in the internal audit which you would have of the supplier facility much before they face an FDA inspection. So all of this actually helps, and that is where supply chain closely works with the regulatory agency, quality teams, to make sure that if they are finding any critical observation or a major observation at supplier during the audit, we are triggering a risk management protocol, which means going forward, making sure that whether the vendor is giving the right compliance, what is the seriousness commitment level to it, and if not, then we start moving towards building an alternate to it. And also one most important aspect is, like I said, we are getting closer to the customer. We are even collaborating with the suppliers. So if we get an information of something which is coming from the market through the early warning signal, market intelligence, or at times from the regulatory itself. I mean, we have been getting requests from the FDA if we see any shortages coming in, right? So that's where we proactively work with suppliers, sensitize them, making sure that they are also able to secure their supplies in terms of the input that is required. Now, all of this is very, very important if you are getting the early warning signal information, and if you are able to openly communicate back to both customers, suppliers, as well as regulatory agencies in terms of your readiness to supply, in terms of your readiness to ramp up And we have seen cases wherein regulatory have gone out of the way and helped in the cause to make sure that there is steady supplies. Now, it only becomes possible when you are upfront and transparent in communication to them.
Rightly said, Gaurav, and it echoes with what Emily also said. So one question that comes up to Emily from the regulatory point of view, how does the regulatory agency track and ensure the patients are not deprived of essential medicines on a regular basis and also aligned to the unexpected urgencies and emergencies? I mean, Gaurav did speak about the areas that are concerned. Nitrosamine is one of them, but are there any thoughts behind it, and how does FDA keep a track of these aspects?
So most of our notifications and the majority come from industry. So we do hear first, majority of the time, from industry. If we're hearing from patients or providers first, then we know we're in a worse situation. But as soon as we hear of a potential issue, we reach out to the companies that are the majority of the market, just to see what's going on, if we haven't already heard from the companies ahead of time. So when we do that, that is when we start thinking of what next steps need to happen. So, so we look at next steps and going to other manufacturers. We make sure we don't say who is having issues. We keep everything as close to our best as possible, not to divulge any information to anyone else. So what we are told from companies, we keep to, it's not open information for other people. So I think that's something maybe that keeps companies from coming to us. Maybe they're afraid that information is going to go out and we don't. But in order for us to do something to keep product available, we do need to hear about it. So then we'll start looking to see if there are other manufacturers available that might be able to step in. Sometimes, oral products versus an injectable product may be easier to balance out among other companies. Injectables just are another area that provide additional complexity within the supply chain and making product available. So there's always that additional hurdle to overcome. But just being able to go to other companies to see if they are available with additional capacity, if they are able, maybe they supply product ex-US or overseas that can be diverted upfront. That could also help keep product available. If we have to work with non-FDA approved manufacturers, we'll do that as well. That's probably the extreme of the tools that we will look for to keep product continuity for patients, but that's a step that we need to continue to look into. So it's really active communication among all the different parties to try and keep product available. So earlier we hear things, the more options we have available to keep product available.
Thank you so much, Emily. Dr. Ranjana, you heard Pradeep talking about nitrosamine, you heard Gaurav talking about the supply chain and the vendor qualification and the expectation of FDA. Would you like to summarize that? What exactly, I know that quality is everywhere, but is there something that you would just try to give us a short overview of what exactly would be the expectations from the industry, given the three different dimensions from quality, supply chain, and the regulatory expectations from for the products?
So are you speaking about nitrosamine specifically?
I am talking about nitrosamine. I'm talking about supply chain, which Gaurav spoke about.
Excellent.
And also about the way the support is coming from regulatory agencies, and so heartening to know that they are ready to work with us. We are ready to work with them, with the regulatory agencies, and trying to look at, and very, very aptly said by Emily, about looking at the potential issues, trying to look at what could be the possibilities of understanding the complexities of the manufacturing. So what would be your thoughts to support this? I mean, just as an industry representative, what would you have to add here?
So I think this is the best of times. Best of times because we have academia who's missing here, but I think IPA can act as the academia. We have the regulatory body, and within our company, we have supply chain, we have manufacturing, we have the R&D group, we have everybody working together. So I think this is the best of times. And also what I believe, and I think, thank you, Emily, for saying what you said, is tell us early. I think the industry has always been reticent in not being so forthcoming if there is a problem, if there's a media failure, and if that's going to going to disrupt some sterile product. I think it's very heartwarming to hear Emily validate what was my thinking is tell me, I'll help you solve it. Instead of don't tell me and I'll hear it from the patient. So I think it's the best of times. Also, if all of us, the disciplines within our companies, we work very closely with each other, and I see that happening more and more. I don't see silos. I see integrated work happening. I think we will be a much stronger, better, sustainable industry, and the 62% of drug shortage is slowly going to come down. But in essence, catch it early, look at what the signs are, what are the warning signs, and speak. Talk about the problem. And what we just heard from Emily is confidential. It's not going to be posted on the internet. So when we have the regulator reaching out to us, what better can we ask for? So I think it's the best of times, and we should really avail all opportunities and ensure that our industry remains rock solid and the patient knows I don't have to worry about this drug not being there in my closet. Neither should the pharmacist worry about it. So that would be net. It sounds like motherhood and apple pie, but it's not.
I think, Dr. Ranjana, you summed it up very well. So thank you so much, each one of you, giving your insight into the requirement and how we can mitigate the drug shortage requirements. Just to summarize, I think Dr. Ranjana started talking about the end-to-end value chain operations, the criticality, patient. Pradeep touched upon cross-contaminations, investigations, and most important, quick to adapt to the guidances which are there. Training competency is something is of very critical part of our system. Gaurav touched upon so many aspects about the availability of raw material, and Dr. Anjana, you spoke about the self-inspection, and also looking at the audits, internal audits, to try and look at what can be done correctly without trying to spend time on responding to your 483. Of course, we had a session yesterday, but if we are compliant, I think we'll have less of 483s, and we'll spend more time on our compliance and ensuring the supplies are maintained. And the science-based decisions are something that is quite important for us. Emily, you spoke very aptly about the information ahead of time so that the regulatory agencies can take care of the requirements, support the industry, support the individual companies who have the expertise, who have the capability to manufacture at the right time. And nitrosamine, yes, it's heartening to know that we are taking over and trying to understand the requirements. We are trying to make sure that it doesn't really affect us. We had a lot of concerns in the recent times, but good to know that right from your supply chain to your R&D to the manufacturing, everybody is aware of it, and we should be able to take care of it. The FDA is helping us. The guidance coming up from regulatory agencies is definitely making sure that we are all harmonized in terms of handling the issues. Gaurav talked about the safety stock, demand forecasting, and long-term contracts is something that's quite essential, and ensuring that we do not have any kind of price erosion and price fluctuations. And most important is the availability of the material, availability of the medicines to the patient. So very important. I think heartening to know that Emily spoke about the support to the industry, and we are there to support. And thank you so much. It was quite a learning. I'm sure the participants and the audience did get a chance to know a very good perspective from each one of you. And thanks a lot for your time. It was quite an enlightening discussion. So